Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 150.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow game, Jay Massey.
All right, guys. I just wanted to say I can tell that you were listening to the episode earlier this week because you're beginning to leave the reviews and ratings on the show. Thank you. So for those of you who may have missed it, we are trying to get to 100 reviews. You get to participate, help us get to 100, and you're going to be entered into a contest to win a copy of the Cashflow board game. Now, let's be very clear. I need you to leave the written kind of review. A rating is great, and I want those, but we need the review because otherwise I don't know your name. That's how we're going to be able to know who you are, and so we can announce to everybody that you win. So everybody who enters our reviews will be entered to win. Again, we're trying to do so by July 4th of this year. So let's hope that we can all come together and actually make it. Now, I'm going to get you over to the interview. All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. My name is Jay, and I'm your host, but you probably knew that already. Here's what we're going to be talking about today, something that you may not have even considered. More importantly, it's possibly a state you've never even been in. Obviously, today we're going to be talking about real estate, but guess what? They have real estate in Alaska. Now, how many of you know exactly where that is on the map? Now, I'm just kind of messing with you, but at the same time, one of the great things about real estate is that no matter where you are, you need two things: the legal right to own property and people to deal with. And there are people who live all across many different states and many different places in the world. And today's guest happens to live and invest out there in the Alaska marketplace. How do you produce cash flow where it's cold? Well, here's the thing. Many of you probably know shows right now like Ice Road Truckers and all this other stuff. You know, maybe some of you have this desire to one day have an Alaskan ice lodge. I have no idea what type of real estate or the unique things we're going to discover today. But today's guest, Keith Weinhold, is an international real estate investor based in Anchorage, Alaska. He owns residential apartment buildings, income single-family houses, vacant investment land, which sounds interesting to me, oil and gas wells, as well as agricultural land. That means it produces something useful since 2002. And here's the thing. Many of you know that as real estate investors, what tends to happen is that we just go out there and do stuff. And then at some point, the world finds out who we are and what we're doing. And then we start trying to share and help other people. And that's exactly what Keith is here to do. In fact, he's even started his own podcast, Get Rich Education. It's a weekly podcast, and you need to go over there and listen to that one too, because you're going to learn more, because he's got Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad advisors over there to listen to. And I'm going to guess that you'll learn at least one new thing. Anyway, let's see what's going on up there in Alaska. Keith, you there?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Great to be on the show.
How are you?
Hey, I'm feeling pretty good, and I am staying warm.
Well, that was my next question, is like, how cold is it?
It's actually 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It's been a pretty mild winter. I'm looking at more grass than snow outside right now.
At 30 degrees, you realize at 30 degrees, there's no California. That's like, we're not going there. That's just not it. That's not it. Okay. So let me ask the question, because a number of people I'm sure are already wondering. They know that I look at today's entrepreneurs like yesterday's superheroes, and we always have this origin story. We start somewhere. Now, you've listed a whole bunch of different things that you've invested in. I mean, apartment buildings, single family homes, vacant investment land, oil and gas and agriculture, all of these diverse things for well over a decade now. However, before you were out there providing quality real estate to people, who is Keith Weinhold?
I was just a normal person that grew up in a lower middle class home in rural Pennsylvania that was really into competing in endurance sports. And I was also really into travel. So geography was always a significant interest growing up, and so was business. So with a geography interest, I traveled a lot, and one of the places I liked traveling to was Alaska. And when I visited Anchorage, Alaska, I found a city of 300,000 people where I wanted to passionately move to and live now. Yet the paradox is that I am in a huge state that has more caribou, as in reindeer, than people. So Anchorage really gave me all I wanted to do, my outlet for outdoor sports, yet I can be in a city with amenities of 300,000 people. So my journey has really been aspiring to live where I want to live within a certain geography. And then you can let the income fall into place. But you got to go for happiness first. Go for what you want, secure the happiness, and then secure the income rather than doing it in the opposite direction, which is what most people do.
Yeah, yes. I think it's funny that there's more caribou than people. That's an interesting thought. I was like, wow, look, there's another one and another one. So what would you say, what was some of the initial occupations that you held before you became a real estate person, or was that the very first thing you ever did?
No, it's not the first thing I did. I did construction materials testing, and there's quite a bit of construction in Alaska because there's a lot of land in Alaska. This is the largest U.S. state. And then when I had a little bit of a down payment set up from that workaday job, I launched into buying my first ever property. Rather than buying a single family home or a duplex, I went with a four-plex right away. So I just used some of that W-2 income to buy a fourplex, live in one unit, and rent out the other three. And I didn't have a lot of money, Jay, but you don't need it. With a 3.5% down payment, you can control a fourplex with an FHA loan. That's a program that still exists today.
Well, hold on. I just want to make sure. So you're saying you made your transition from a W-2 situation by, it sounds like you lived in one unit and rent out the other three. Is that accurate?
That's how it began.
Awesome. There are so many people who always ask me about, does that make sense? And I'm like, yeah, but you're like the first person I've ever talked to that actually did that. So that's pretty interesting. So what was that like living near your tenants? Because I always imagined that would be weird.
It was pretty weird, and I made all of the mistakes in the beginning, Jay. I don't even know how to fix anything either. But,
nice.
Still, but I knew that my best and highest use probably was not to be the best faucet fixer in Midtown Anchorage anyway. But as you know, property management really ought to be called tenant management. And when you live in the same fourplex building as your tenants and you're young and you don't know how to fix anything either, you make a lot of mistakes. Some of the mistakes I made were when I would get busy at work and I wanted to screen tenants, I wanted to do it quickly. I wanted to fill the units. Sometimes you just have motivation to get the vacant unit occupant, and I made all kinds of bad decisions, not running credit checks. One time I rented to 3 girls because they were going to live in the unit right next to me, and their chief qualification criterion for living right next to me is that they were attractive. Well, that didn't end well.
Yeah, I can see all the, I bet that, well, we all make mistakes, and speed sometimes is one of those mistakes that I know I've run into more than once. And at the end of the day, one of the great things about real estate is that it's very, very forgiving. But you bring up this concept of my highest and best use. I'd love for you to elaborate on that, because I'm guessing a number of people, occasionally, because when you're starting out small, you go, well, I can do this myself, I can do this, and I can learn to go fix it. You chose not to go learn how to become a faucet fixer. I'd like to understand why and what you meant by your highest and best use.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some people are focused on doing things right. They're focused on doing things right in their everyday life, and they sort of put their head down. Most people go to work, and they go to work to earn money. That's the number one reason that they go to work and focus on that activity that is a W-2 job. So they're so focused on work and thinking about how they can do their work best, yet the only reason that they go to work is to earn money, yet they don't spend any time learning about money, even though money is the only reason that they go to work. So it doesn't make any sense to me. So shortly after buying a four-plex building, I was more interested in the angle of looking at the numbers and seeing how that worked for me. And, I really owned that four-plex building for a few years before I even understood what concepts like leverage and cash-on-cash return really mean. So that's really a better and higher use than figuring out how to replace a toilet flapper. So it's better. It's a better and higher use to learn about the financial concepts and how that's doing the right thing more so than doing things right.
Nice. Now, you mentioned something that I find interesting. There's probably someone somewhere freaking out going, hold on, you didn't understand cash on cash return or leverage, but yet you bought the building. I love the ability to take action without having 100% of the information, but I guess at what point is there a basic level? What did you know? If you didn't know that, what did you know that said, hey, I should go do this?
That's a good point, because when I was raised, I never heard from my parents any of this scarcity mentality stuff about living below your means. That's just something that they never said, luckily. But I was not raised in a place or in a home that flourished real estate investing or entrepreneurship or business. My parents didn't know anything about that. So after moving to Anchorage, I met two friends that were about my age. Again, your net work ends up determining your net worth. And I had two friends, one that was definitely more competent than the other. And if I knew that the other could figure this out, I figured that I could figure it out as well. So I kind of began with the end in mind. I think most people know that real estate's created more millionaires and billionaires than anything else, but they just don't know how. So beginning with the end in mind, knowing that I was using the right vehicle, I just decided I'd work my way back and figure it out. So yeah, it did take some optimism and a leap of faith, but I think any business-minded person that's entrepreneurial kind of has this intrinsic optimism within them anyway.
Well, yes, if it hasn't been beaten out of us, and by the time we start developing the courage to go out there and do something with it. So walk us through, now that you've got the fourplex, how long was it before you decided to buy the second one?
Well, 3 years after buying the first fourplex, I decided to enhance my lifestyle and move out to a single family home. So first of all, that act right there opened up a fourth rental unit because I had vacated it. So once I moved out, I had 4 rent incomes rather than 3. Additionally, I found another use of a key concept, other people's money. Now I could use 4 rent incomes to qualify for the single family home. And after owning that single family home for a couple years, we were back here in 2005 where appreciation was rapid. So using other people's money in another way, I took some of the accumulated equity from that first fourplex building and just did an equity transfer and bought the second fourplex building. So basically, I only put 3.5% down on that first fourplex building. With a cash out refinance from the accumulated equity, I basically put none of my own money on that second fourplex building. I just transferred some of the equity from the first one into the second one. I mean, talk about using other people's money. There you go.
Well, that's true. That's true. The thing that I want to stress, though, is the time frame in which that was. Many times individuals can want to create, real estate portfolios significantly fast. And I'm not saying they always have to be quote unquote slow or fast or one way or the other, but I think you had I think you went in with a plan, and and even though the plan may not be 100% clear when you start, it began to develop, and you were willing to let it develop, because it wasn't like you bought one building and then 3 months later you bought the next one. You learned what you needed to learn, and you expanded, it sounds as very intelligently throughout the years to be able to get to where you are today. So it wasn't, and I guess that's a long way of saying it wasn't get rich quick or overnight.
Yeah, you're right. You know, I probably would have a better story had I acted faster and I was able to tell you something like I took down four-plex buildings in 1 year, but that wasn't true. I was pretty young after I bought that first four-plex. Yeah, I figured it was doing some good things for me. I knew I was basically living rent-free, but, I was off into other things in life. But real estate is such a rapid wealth builder. After a couple years, you look around, you look at the numbers adding up, you look at the financial situation that it's put you in, and you're like, wow, this has done something to me and elevated my wealth and opened up how I'm able to use my time better than any other vehicle ever. So, wait a second, what was it that's contributing to this? So, I was starting to dissect what this fourplex building has done for me and talk about doing the right thing rather than doing things right and talking about better and higher uses. I started to realize how other people's money was leveraging a greater asset value for me with just a 3.5% down payment. Because here's the thing, I was starting to put together that most people in their life are making a misallocation of resources. They think that the best and highest use of their investment dollars is getting their money to work for them. If they can get some of their money working for them, maybe in a 401k, which doesn't produce any income like real estate does, then what could be better than that? I'll just put my head down and keep working as long as I know I have some of my money working for me. No, you don't want to concern yourself with getting your money to work for you as well as you can. You want to concern yourself with getting other people's money to work for you. No one gets wealthy by using their own money. Most people don't get that. People don't get wealthy by using their own money. You get wealthy using other people's money. Now, that's a foreign concept to some people, Jay. Some
Well,
people are like, using other people's money. Is that legal? And if it were legal, would it even be ethical? Yeah, it is ethical. It doesn't mean that you are exploiting people. You're creating great value for them. I provide them with housing that's safe, functional, affordable, and clean. As long as I'm doing those things, I can feel like I'm creating value for society, and then I feel entitled to the rewards that I'm being given because I've created value first.
yes, indeed. And you always give more in use value than you take in cash value. At the end of the day, or what I find very interesting is lessons like these. I'm just gonna ask. You learned them in college and high school, right?
Yeah, I learned them in college and high school, and I only have a geography degree from college. It was not some advanced degree. It's not like I learned how to do a whole lot of complex math to try to figure out what real estate is doing for me.
Right.
The nice thing about real estate, besides just being the last frontier where you don't need a formal education to excel, you don't even need to know how to do math well with all these calculations. I've never used calculus or trigonometry with real estate calculations. It's just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Yeah, that's all you got to know.
Well, now you're getting personal. See, some of us actually do know how to use calculus and trigonometry, but that's okay. I realize I don't need it. It's all good. But you're right. At the end of the day, you take the four basic operations and add maybe financial calculator to it, and you're pretty much done. So talk to us, if you will, about this transition into, because I'm at least curious about, you call it vacant investment land. I would love to know what do you? I've never heard anyone call anything vacant investment land. Almost sounds like an oxymoron.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe in fact, vacant, really speculative land could be a better term to use. I wouldn't call it completely speculative, though, because this land is on Ambergris Caye, Belize, a place that I think you're familiar with, and it is right in the path of progress, right where they built that new road from the east side of Ambergris Caye to the west side of Ambergris
Oh, got it.
Belize. And for those listeners that aren't familiar yet, Ambergris Caye, Belize was voted twice in a row as TripAdvisor's #1 island in the world. It's the only English-speaking country in Central America. It's only a 2-hour flight from major U.S. airports, and all the baby boomers are really starting to push up asset values on that island. So that's why I've called it investment land.
Got it. Well, knowing that, I agree. Let's move on to oil and gas, because I don't think we've had anyone who's has any experience in understanding that. But one of the things I want everybody to know is that if you've ever been in a situation where you're wondering how to get your tax money back, especially in the U.S., there's in many other jurisdictions as well, You only have to typically do one of four things. You have to provide food. If you learn to provide food to the general population, you can tend to get lots of your tax money back. Provide jobs, obviously, as an employer. Provide housing. There's many, many, many ways to do it with housing. And then providing energy. When you're owning oil and gas, that's one of the things that I know I'm personally curious about. So I would love to know what sparked or inspired that move. I mean, you're doing real estate, you've got apartments or fourplexes, single family houses, land going, and then all of a sudden you just wake up one day and say, I think oil and gas makes sense too.
Yeah, that's through a private placement. So I'm basically involved in someone else's syndication where they have pooled funds together, and I am a direct investor in oil and gas wells. And those wells are in the Bakken Shale of North Dakota. And my decision for doing that is that it is a cash flow producer. It has some significant tax benefits, some of them even better than real estate. And it basically gives me some stability in case we have a down real estate market. So it is a cash flow producer, and that's probably the number one reason that I got into that. And it's also very low maintenance. Even having a property manager for my properties in different markets, sometimes you have to make asset management decisions, and I don't even need to do that with oil and gas.
Yeah, so, no, not really. And let me guess, do you think there's going to be a need for oil and gas in the near future?
Are you tired of letting good cash flow generating ideas go to waste? Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready to apply for a complimentary, yes, that means free, one-on-one breakthrough session. Take action now. Go to cashflowdiary.com/ready. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/ready. Before we get back to today's episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, your host Jay Massey has some important insights to share with you.
All right. Have you noticed and just enjoyed the fact that real estate investing is so diverse? We're not having a land kick, but I just thought it would be interesting to kind of share some very similar things from different types of investors of all kinds. You can slice and dice this pie any way you like. Here's the thing. It's only limited by your creativity. If you're willing to go out there and apply your brain and let it flow and row, you have a shot at coming up with a very unique strategy that could be your very own, dominate in a small little market and be able to provide significant amounts of good. So just something to think about as we continue.
In the near future, yes, since that's been our fuel source for quite a long time. Yeah, there are some concerns with the lower cost of a barrel of oil for sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Different things become important at that point. Now, agricultural land? Help me understand. Like, what are you producing? Or is it like corn, wheat, strawberries, blueberries? What's the thing?
That is coffee. And it's coffee. Yeah. It looks a little bit like oil. And I don't know that it's a food or a need, but boy, to most Americans, it sure sounds like a need. So I like the sustainability and the durability of the income from coffee plants. And I'm soon going to have the owner and the principal of the investment that puts together this coffee farm investment for people, but that produces cash flow. It's in Central America. And, it's nice to be involved in something that both produces cash flow and coffee trees are not tenants. The trees show up every day. They know what to do. They don't call you with anything that's broke.
They work very well. 24 hours.
Well. Yeah.
No labor laws.
Yeah. Again, it's a little something uncorrelated with U.S. real estate. I know you're just asking me about some of the niche things, which are more interesting to talk about because they're different. But my number one thing is cash flowing United States real estate. That's where I really got to become who I am and build a lot of cash flow passively. So these other things are just different things that are uncorrelated. They're not really the core part of what I do.
Well, the point I'm trying to underscore, though, is all the different ways that there are real estate plays that exist in many different marketplaces. Because one, you're already in Alaska, which for most of us is a foreign country.
Yeah.
Then you've got investment land in a foreign country in the Caribbean, and then you're doing the oil and gas thing over in the Bakken, and then you've got the producing land that's producing something that many of us are very familiar with, coffee, in where'd you say that was? Central America?
Yeah, that's in Panama.
Okay, perfect. But the point is that one person, you can have such an impact across many different continents and countries, and all you're doing in this particular case is still real estate related plays. And that's the thing that I like about it. I like the diversification of real estate, how it can always be used. It doesn't really matter. You only need, as I said, the legal right to own property and people to deal with. Now, I'm sure somebody, though, is asking this question because I know I ask this question, when I'm looking at certain marketplaces, and you're alluding to it. I'm assuming the majority of your stuff is in the U.S. Is it mostly in Alaska?
Yeah, it's Alaska and the 48 states, but yeah, most of my units are in Alaska.
Which leads us to the question, because this is the general question I get all the time about my marketplaces. Why Alaska?
Well, I don't think you have to live in the market that, let me say that again. I don't think that you have to invest in the market that you live in, but oftentimes it helps. And it just helps so much for an investor, beginning, intermediate, or advanced, to sit down with your local lender and find out what financing programs there are. I know in Alaska there are financing programs specific to in-state residents, and a lot of times that gives quite a bit more benefits. For example, you can do an owner-occupied duplex with a great interest rate and little or no PMI for 5% down here, or you can get multifamily loans, and Class C multifamily is probably what I specialize in here because that gives the highest cap rate yield. And I was able to do multifamily loans with just 20% down rather than 25 and get a really great interest rate by keeping some of those dollars in state.
Got it. Now, before you went really fast there, and I want to make sure that everybody stays up with this because I can see right now you and I are about to have a very deep conversation. Explain, if you will, because you mentioned PMI and then you also mentioned really, really fast what Class C is. Because many of us, when I often talk about Walmart, Target, and Nordstrom, which I think will relate to what you're talking about. But those two concepts, let's camp there for a second to make sure that everybody comes along. Because once we pick up this conversation, it's going to go quickly, guys. So I want you guys to be prepared and ready.
Okay, you want to learn more about Class C multifamily buildings?
Class C, and I just want to, yes, your understanding of PMI so that everybody else knows, as well as then the Class C, so that as you and I pick up this conversation, because it's going to go fast and a lot of terms are going to come at them really, really quickly.
Okay, PMI, that stands for private mortgage insurance. That is basically a really annoying expense that you, the borrower, have to pay to the bank just so that you can protect them so that you don't default against them. It's an annoying expense, usually a few $100s per month. And that's something you often need to have in place if you have less than 20% equity on a property. As a general rule, after you have 20% equity in a property, you can generally retire that annoying expense.
Yes, annoying keywords. And the whole Class C concept, especially up there. That's interesting.
Yeah, Class C is kind of a lesser grade of real estate. It's not a slum. I would call something slummy Class D. Class A is the best. Class A means new construction. You might have some really nice amenities like a pool and a clubhouse, sauna, and gym in new Class A property. Class B is a step down. Class B might be, everyone has definitions a little bit different, but 10 to 20-year-old properties with fewer amenities. And then Class C, which is sort of my wheelhouse, is, above something that's in a war zone, because war zones have their own tenant problems and you might not even get the rent. But Class C in this market sort of seems to be a sweet spot where you can get an 8.5 capitalization rate and durable tenants. Anchorage has a lot of jobs with durability, a lot of resource extraction jobs, and that caters to sort of a Class C tenant where you might pay $1,200 for a 2-bed, 1-bath, 900 square foot apartment. That's my niche. That's profitable, and that's sustainable.
Got it. Okay, so you said $1,200 for a 900 square foot apartment. I'm over here doing math real fast because I tend to break everything down on dollars per square foot.
Yeah,
because that's like my thing. So that's $1.33. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it is. And the property prices are a little bit higher too. So, Jay, maybe a typical Class C 12-unit building in this market would sell for about $1 million. That's the kind of that I like to buy. And it's just going to have Class C 2-bed, 1-bath units of about 900 square feet.
Okay, so there's the difference. And that's got to be job-based then. Basically, your job market's got to be driving that.
Yes, the job market's driving that. There's a real paradox in this huge state without a lot of people. You have over 300,000 people in Anchorage. So can you imagine living in a state where more than half that state's people live in one city? That's where we're at. So you have this geographic constraint. On the west side of Anchorage, you have water, the ocean, Cook Inlet. On the east side, you have mountains, and there's a lot of demand to live here because this is where the jobs are. So we have a land shortage in Anchorage, which is what drives those prices, which is totally paradoxical because we live in a state with more caribou than people.
Okay, hold on. You said how many people in the city?
There are over 300,000 residents of the city of Anchorage, Alaska. That doesn't include suburbs.
Got it. And then, all right, and there's not enough land for you guys to live on.
Yeah, which throws people for a loop because we have this giant state. The state is more than twice the size of Texas, and fewer than 1 million people live in this entire state, which is twice the size of Texas. Yet the paradox is that land shortage in Anchorage, Alaska, the biggest city. Crazy.
Those are unique economic factors that are there. Now, I guess that's pretty interesting. Why? So is there no room to build?
We are running out of room to build places. We do downtown. We do have a few buildings that are greater than 20 stories tall. So we do have a small skyline, but most of the city just feels like you're driving around in suburbs. So we're kind of transitioning from a plan and zoning where we need to begin building up because we cannot build out anymore.
Right.
And some of the things, Jay, that are driving the jobs and the desire to live here is the lifestyle is really good here. The summers are warmer than most people think, and we can talk about that some more. But with the jobs, Jay, first of all, Anchorage International Airport, this totally surprises some people. That is the second busiest cargo airport in the entire United States, second only to Memphis, where the FedEx hub is.
Yeah, I knew the number one. I knew what number one was. I didn't know what number two was, but that's interesting. So then there's a significant logistics infrastructure, I would assume, there as well.
Yeah, there's a significant logistics infrastructure. There's a railroad hub here. The port of Anchorage, the seaport, is where almost 90% of the goods for this entire state come into, and that port is located in Anchorage. So again, sustainable, durable jobs. Another thing that drives job growth here is the largest oil field, not just in the United States, but in the entire North American continent, is right here in Alaska, and the corporate headquarters for that oil field extraction are here in Anchorage. So, what's the commonality here, Jay? We have the port, we have the airport, and we have an oil field. All three of those jobs are based on either resource extraction or distribution. Right. Those are the kind of jobs that cannot be easily outsourced or automated. We don't have much manufacturing here. We're not putting together circuit boards or producing something else where those jobs can be shipped off to Asia. Those jobs have to stay here, and that supports the durability of the income streams from Class C multifamily buildings.
Absolutely, and that's always been my point about Memphis specifically. What you just said right there. Now, the other thing that I like that you're telling me is those jobs also can't be, you said outsourced, but I also say offshored. You can't send those jobs. There's no way to send a seaport somewhere else, or the oil is where it is. You got to come to it to get it out, and you're experiencing a land shortage. That is an amazing thought process in and of itself, especially when you're living in a state the size of we're used to saying a state the size of Texas, and we know that means something big, but it's the state the size of Alaska, and that's a completely different interesting. That has got to be interesting. So the only thing I'm not exactly fond of at this moment is your per unit cost. Simply because you're experiencing the shortage, everything is selling at a premium, is what it sounds like, which would also drive a healthy construction and building, which is something you alluded to earlier. So, which is why I thought it was interesting when you said Class C. It's like, how can you have there? It seems like they would be building so much that they would either be tearing it down and building new stuff. That would be the better play in a lot of cases.
Yeah, the cost of construction is awfully high around here. So,
I see.
I've got multifamily buildings mostly built in the 60s and 70s here, but the numbers still work. Just going real roughly, to give you the numbers on that 12-unit multifamily apartment building, Jay, that has a market value of $1 million here. And I told you that a 2-bed, 1-bath, 900 square foot unit is about $1,200 of rent.
Yeah.
1,200 times 12 units, that's a little over $14K per month.
Right.
So we know a 1% rent ratio being what 1 month's rent is divided by the purchase price of a property, being 1% or more. With multifamily, you usually have to pay more in utilities. So you might want a 1.1 or a 1.2. Well, dude, that ratio right there is 1.4, 14K a monthly rent income divided by a $1 million building. Those numbers work, and property taxes are kept in check here. Another favorable thing that keeps people in Alaska is the property tax climate and the overall tax climate. Alaska is one of the few states that has no state income tax, there's no state sales tax, and there's no municipal sales tax, and property taxes are kept in check. They're about 1.25% of the value of a property each year versus a lot of Texas markets where you have a 3% property tax rate. So Anchorage has been named the most tax-advantaged city in the United States, a lot of places.
You keep talking, Keith. I might actually be on a plane up there soon. I mean, you're describing all of the same market characteristics of the marketplaces that I prefer, with one huge, major exception: the weather. And it's the weather, man. It's like, oh my gosh. I've been to Alaska. There's an Air Force base out that direction, and that's why I was out there. My family's all Army and Air Force and whatnot. But it's cold, man. It's cold and dark. That's what I remember. But talk to us a little bit. Why? If it wasn't for the jobs, is there any other reason to be there?
Well, I'm here for the lifestyle. I moved here because I wanted to live here before I knew anything about real estate investing. So all those demographic things that I just told you about are things I learned a few years after I owned a building. So I'm guessing you were probably at Elmendorf Air Force Base out here in Anchorage.
That sounds familiar. It was when I was little, elementary age. I just remember it being darkened, and that's where I saw my first totem pole. It's where I lost my 2 front teeth because I tried to catch a Frisbee with my mouth. It was awesome. But and then I remember going on one of those cruises where you can see the glaciers. So those are the things that I remember from Alaska.
Yeah, you can do that here. Well, with the weather, in the summertime, the summers are really nice. The high temperatures are typically in the 60s and 70s. Anchorage is a green place. There's a lot of flowers. My wife plants a lot of flowers. And see, part of living in Anchorage is we have moose that just roam through the city of 300,000, huge wild moose, and they will go trample my wife's flower beds and eat the flowers.
Nice.
But we do have, nice landscaped yards here. But yeah, the winters to some people, they really are long, dark, and cold. Me, I embrace winter sports. And additionally, my wife and I probably stack up more vacations in the wintertime than we do the summer. I only live 8 minutes from Anchorage International Airport. I mean, so sometimes my listeners wonder how I can go to these other real estate markets and report back about them and be this international investor living in a relatively geographically isolated place that they think of as a cold place. But living 8 minutes from the airport, I can be in the contiguous U.S. states in 3 hours. I can be in Chicago or Honolulu in 6 hours. New York and Philly, that is kind of a longer trip. That's more than 9 hours, but I live very close to a major airport. So, I really feel like I have the best of it all. I can do my outdoor sports. I'm not too isolated, and I have all the amenities, entertainment, and restaurants of a city of 300,000. So I really feel lucky. I chose to live here. I moved here because I wanted to live here.
Understood. And that's a great reason to great motivation, great reason to do all of those things. It's just, I hadn't considered, honestly, once I start thinking about the weather, I hadn't considered at all. But the numbers you're reporting are all within the parameters that I'm always looking for, especially the rent to price ratios. The entry price is definitely higher, but that's okay because that can be made up for with the higher rents, which is not normal. But in this particular case, with the land shortage and the kind of jobs that make sense, you guys make it work. So for those that are listening right now and possibly would like to find out more about what you've got going on, what's their best course of action at this moment?
The best way for them to find me is to go to iTunes or Stitcher and check out the Get Rich Education podcast. I just tell you about investing in various real estate markets, mostly in the United States, and how you don't have to follow money in life. Most people follow a money trail in life. If their job moves to a different market or a different city, they will go move and follow money. You don't have to. You can live where you want to live and make money follow you. I show you how to make money follow you. I am proof that you can live where you want to live and do this. I live in Anchorage, Alaska. So you can find out more at the Get Rich Education podcast. Thanks for that.
Excellent, excellent. And to that person or persons who maybe they're considering getting started. Maybe they're thinking, maybe they had the exact same idea. Like, I wonder if buying a four-plex would work and if I could live in one. But they haven't quite done it yet. Maybe they're still in the job. They could be listening right now on the way to work going, okay, I got to do something about this. But they haven't found the courage necessarily to step out like you did. What would you say to them?
I would say that a four-plex is the greatest springboard to wealth for the everyday investor. With an FHA loan, you still only need to put 3.5% down, and you only have an owner-occupant requirement for 12 months. That means you only need to live there for 12 months to qualify for the financing. If you've got a wife, if you've got kids, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. And if you can't swing that at all for 12 months, I understand. But it's only 12 months of your life. And then when you move out, you vacated one of those units, you have 4 rent incomes in, and then you can really use those incomes to qualify for a better home while you're enjoying the cash flow and the leverage from the fourplex. So look into that.
Indeed. Well, Keith, I definitely appreciate the time that you've taken here to invest with us at the Cashflow Diary. And we definitely wish that you stay warm and continue to do the things that you're out there doing. Thanks for being here today.
That's been fun, Jay. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. You know what? Maybe today it's time for you to get on a plane and go to Alaska, go say hi to Keith and figure out exactly what Alaska's got going on, because I think we all learned some things today. But definitely check out his podcast at Get Rich Education. Just go to iTunes, type it in, get started, and listen and learn, because understanding what's going on in various marketplaces will help you become a bigger, better, badder, well-rounded investor. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.